Chapter 7. They weren't going on tour yet. This was a precursor to a tour, with Steve setting up the appearances to publicise the album and test the water for something in the following spring. Perhaps a support slot for one of the largest American acts, or just maybe a headline tour on the circuit the British bands used as their launch into continental America. He had developed contacts with the 930 Club in Washington and Hammerstein Ballroom in New York, as well as all the famous East Coast venues that could pave the way for their trip west or branching north into Canada. But it took work. North American audiences were not going to rock up because a band from England were touring. They had to be teased into the idea that if they didn't get in on this early, they were going to miss out on seeing something at its birth. Americans don't like to be outboasted, and the tactics was to make sure they believed they'd be forever kicking themselves if they weren't at the first Cormax tour of North America. Steve's idea was the company marketing line. Imagine being in LA and not seeing the Doors at the Whiskey A Go Go. If Floyd, the Stones, or Van Morrison played your town and you weren't there, you'd spend the rest of your life listening to your friends relaying their anecdotes about those moments in local history, just like when Zepp played Kimbell's back in '69. The strategy was simple and hardly unique, tactically identical to the one Steve had been successfully using for years with his new bands back in England. He just rebadged it into American marketing language. In these early days of the internet, Steve was in his element and ahead of the competition. He was young enough not to be befuddled by the age-old strategies employed by his experienced bosses, and Steve embraced the cutting-edge feel of a new-age technology. He moved the traditional mailing lists from the letterbox to inboxes, saving the company a fortune and releasing the rewards that closer proximity between band and fan could deliver. He had quickly jumped onto the e-bus and engaged with his enabled audience that all had either Hotmail or Yahoo accounts, giving Steve the quickest access to them all. And the music was good enough. The Hype in the UK was founded on a great first album and their tight live act, captured on an EP from the Borderline, Finding the Crack, notched well enough for a debut album, spending 5 weeks in the top 10. It was only kept off the top slots by the respectable competition from Suede, Rem and Kula Shaker. The media streams were promoting the four lads from Dublin with a sound that conjured up U2 before Bono turned all wanky. It melded with the Celtic intensity and musicianship that bands like the Levellers showed off nightly in sweaty venues across Britain. Steve was smug about the way he developed the band, his band. He had found them giggling at a near-empty Mean Fiddler 18 months before, but he made them smarter, tighter and more confident by arranging an intense tour of English venues, playing initially to small, unfamiliar audiences. They had to learn how to handle playing to strangers, learning to successfully deal with the sorts of issues that had blighted that awful Portsmouth gig in front of Tina 7 long years before. Being on the road gave them a chance to get the new songs, the show and the package right. And now America called. Although she was pleased for him and that things were moving up in the right direction, Tina only agreed to the trip after Steve agreed to a clear outline of what was expected. You know you only get one shot at this. I do, and I won't let you down, Tina. And more importantly, I won't let the band down. More importantly, really? Tina was expressionless, allowing him his moment. You've already given me the contacts, and I'm going to show you what I can do. Smart lad, thought Tina. He had played this well, showing deference but confidence. And he had the band at the centre of what he was doing. He gave a shit about people, unlike many of the others she had employed in whom she had no faith. Tina remained impressed with Steve. She had been from their earliest conversations that had ended up with her attending that wretched gig. More importantly, I won't let the band down. They're doing their bit and this is where I earn my money. I've been right about them so far and it's paid off. And thank you for everything you've done. Even when you've openly doubted me, you've still trusted me to get it right. If you think I'm going to be out of my depth or missing opportunities, don't worry. I'll phone you every day to check in and bring you up to speed. He looked at his boss for a sign of assurance, but Tina remained expressionless, allowing him his moment. Make sure you meet with Jared straight away. He's a good man and your first priority. I appointed him myself, so play nicely. Now enough of this chit-chat. To the pub. We should celebrate. There were no more words to write and no calls to make. Steve had earned this, and the Cormacs were in a good place. Within a year of joining their company, the new band of brothers was ready. Before he left the office, he called Ben, just to let his oldest friend know his news as he always did. After the band split, things went off the rails between them with unfounded suggestions that Steve had stitched the band up by going with Tina on his own. But time had mellowed them both out and they were as close as ever. Ben had reincarnated as Mr. Chips. His days of dreaming about playing a double-fretted Gibson at Madison Square Garden in the style of Jimmy Page were long gone. Now he spent his life functioning as a tireless devotee to the boys at one of the finest public schools in England, although a guitar was never too far away. Typically, he reached Ben's voicemail and left a message. He checked his watch and realised his friend, the responsible English teacher and deputy housemaster for the offspring of the exceptionally well-heeled, was probably supervising something dull like fourth form prep. It was a world away from this life where the pub was calling.